Welcome back to another edition of Green is Good Goes Hollywood. We're here today with my good friend and co-host Debbie Levin. She's the president of the Environmental Media Association. And our next guest is Kevin Whilden. He's the executive director of Sustainable Surf. Welcome to Green is Good, Kevin.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much, Kevin. You know, this is a topic that's not only so important right here in Southern California and beyond around the world to our listeners, but it's a topic we've never covered on this show in 7 years. So we're so thankful for you coming today and sharing this great advocacy about what you're doing and all the great work that's going on right now with regards to sustainable surf. Thank you. You know, before we get talking about sustainable surf, and for our listeners out there to follow along and look online and see what Kevin's up to, you can go to sustainablesurf.org. Talk a little bit about the Kevin Whilden journey and story leading up to Sustainable Surf. How did you even get here? How did you have this epiphany, and how did this all start, this whole journey?
Sure. So I'm a geologist. I studied climate change in Antarctica back in the 90s.
Right.
And that was my passion, to help find solutions for that. And I've done pretty much everything you can think of in that sport: carbon offset development, energy efficiency, renewable energy and solar, even did clean tech, carbon capture technology. And I was in San Francisco during the clean tech boom around 2007, doing that company, and it actually started to die because there was going to be no policy on climate change.
Wow.
So all the VC funding for carbon capture dried up. And I learned how to surf, and around about then I caught a wave, and I realized, hey, surfing's got power, right?
Well, I mean, you learned to surf as an adult.
I did.
And you got into it.
Yeah.
When did you form Sustainable Surf?
So that was in 2011.
Why did you learn how to surf, like out of nowhere, as an adult? And why didn't you learn how to surf when you were a teenager?
Well, so I was in San Francisco driving by the beach, and it was a sunny day, which is rare in the summer in San Francisco, and there were like 200 surfers in the water, and I pulled over, rented a wetsuit and a board, and jumped in the water.
First time?
First time.
No one teaching you, just did it on your own?
Taught myself. It's hard to learn. I grew up near the beach, and that was my wasted...
You grew up near the beach and you didn't surf, but you waited until you were adult in a really cloudy place and you learned how to surf.
That's my wasted youth.
Okay.
So that's 2011.
Right.
You fell in love with surfing.
Yep.
And so talk a little bit about forming Sustainable Surf. How did you put together geology, now your new love of surfing, and now wanting to change the world and make the world a better place?
Sure. Well, my partner, Michael Stewart, a good buddy of mine, he taught me how to surf. He and I started the company together.
Okay.
And we realized that surfing is a sport where people think, oh, surfers, they're environmentalists, right? They must be. They work in the ocean.
Right.
The reality is they're no different than anyone else. They drive cars, they use energy, they don't think about their waste, they don't recycle. But there is an ethos in surfing to be a sustainable sport. The ancient Hawaiians were the original sustainable surf culture. They had an amazing society. They did permaculture, they did watershed management, they did aquaculture, all these amazing lessons from ancient Hawaii that permeate surf culture, but have been forgotten temporarily by our Western surfing society. So we realized, my partner Mike and I, that we could start a nonprofit that could actually transform this culture of surfing to be the strongest example of sustainability in culture.
Wow.
And so that's what we did. And it had to be a nonprofit because we could work with every company that way. We weren't competing with anybody. We could actually help guide every company and every surfer and pro surfer and other NGOs and all that. We could work with them all to break those barriers.
Now, it's so interesting that you came up with this because, I mean, Debbie, you and I know surfers. I don't think you and I surf.
No.
No, and neither do I. I mean, so
No.
so I'm speaking but I know my friends that are surfers, they all complain to me about the same thing. They get these ear infections and all the things that all the ways we've harmed our wonderful and beautiful oceans and environment, they suffer for it. But you had this epiphany with your partner to come up with a solution here.
Right.
So share with Debbie and I and our listeners, because we're new to this. This is all new to Debbie and myself and our listeners. What is Sustainable Surf, and what's your greater mission?
Sure. So our mission is to be the catalyst that transforms surf culture into a powerful force to protect the ocean playground.
Wow.
And I mean, you mentioned the water pollution is a major issue. Like anytime we use water, flush the toilet or do laundry, whatever, that goes into our surf breaks, into the ocean.
What's the action that you want people to take from that mission?
Sure. So there's many different steps. There's one is you can choose a surfboard that's more sustainable, and we have the first ever labeling program for sustainable surfboards, just like organic food, but for surfboards.
Oh.
We have a recycling program for styrofoam packaging. Like when you buy a TV or a computer, that can actually be recycled into a new surfboard again. That's the same foam that's inside a surfboard. And we have a program for surfers to live a more ocean-friendly life, and that's taking all the steps that you've probably talked about thousands of times in the show.
Right.
But putting them in the context of the surfing lifestyle and this sort of larger ethos of a sustainable surf culture.
So you're hitting everything, every portion of, purchasing a surfboard, recycling a surfboard, how it's made, and also now certification system.
How did you get your certification? Who did you work with to create the standard?
Well, so my partner has worked in sustainable product development and certification for a long time. And we were able to basically design our own program based on the best practices of the entire industry. And that's what we do, is we take the best practices in all of sustainable culture and business and tune them up for surf culture so it's effective and powerful in surfing.
Are you guys both based here in Southern California, or where are you guys based?
So I'm based in SoCal, where most of the surf industry is, and then my partner is in San Francisco, where the sustainable culture is very strong.
So how did you mentioned at the top of the show the original Hawaiian Surfers, who were really, truly sustainable in terms of their practices.
Yes.
Did you bring them into this whole new venture of yours and your mission and messaging?
Yes, we're in the process of getting more involved in the stories of ancient Hawaii. I was just over there a couple of months ago for the Wanderlust Yoga Festival and was meeting with some of the elders and some of the Westerners who are now teaching that stuff and figuring out how to make it. Like we've got a recipe for a canoe plant smoothie. So the canoe plants are the 24 plants that the Hawaiians brought from Asia into the Polynesian islands.
Right.
They're the most valuable plants they have that provide food, medicine, water, resources of all kinds, like banana and coconut and taro. So superfoods, a lot of those are superfoods. So there's a recipe that we have for a superfood canoe plant smoothie.
Oh my gosh.
What do you find is the most consistent in the surf culture, for surfers, other than, obviously surfing? Like, what do you find that unifies that culture?
Well, it is surfing. I mean, it's love of the ocean. When you hear about issues that threaten the ocean, like plastics or climate change, like surfing is on the front lines of all those issues. And coral reefs are going to be extinct in 30 years. That's an awesome thing to think about.
Do you think surfers are really aware of all these issues, or do they a lot of them just kind of go in and surf and leave? And
there's this pretty strong awareness, but there's the same barrier to action that everybody else has. It's like the actions don't seem easy to do. Right. Nobody looks at climate change and says, "Oh, that's going to be fun to solve."
How are you reaching your surfers?
So we reach them through our website, through our partners. Like we work with a lot of the brands. They make videos for us. We work with pro surfers to help them do it. But to get back to your question on how we reach them, this is really key. It's the solutions to these problems like plastics and climate change and all that don't seem fun. They seem hard.
Right.
The one thing surfing can do, and this is a joke I like to make, it can make anything look cool and fun by putting a surfer next to anything. Just look at advertisements on TV and the radio and magazines. You'll see surfing next to cars and insurance and computers because it's the image, it's a lifestyle everybody wants, especially in the middle of winter in Iowa.
So surfboards historically were made, they were toxic, and now you're making eco surfboards?
Sure. So as a nonprofit, we don't make. What we do is certify. So we work with partners who are innovating ways to make a more sustainable board. So like a plant-based resin is one of the products that's in our standard.
Wow.
And it's made from the waste of biodiesel production. And it has half the carbon footprint of a normal resin and no toxics. We could glass a surfboard right here.
What percentage of surfboards now are being made with your new standard?
So it's a very low percentage because we just launched it a year ago, but it's growing exponentially.
Really?
Are any of the large companies doing this?
Yes, so one of the large companies, Firewire Surfboards, made a 100% switch
to
making plant-based resin boards.
Wow.
And all the other major companies are now offering it, and you have pro surfers winning contests with these boards.
And so they perform just as well as the old style?
They sure do.
Really?
Yeah, they win contests.
Wow. So are they talking about this on their social media?
Yes, the surfers are. Surf Media is. We won the Agent of Change Award from Surfer Magazine this year for being the nonprofit that's making the most change happening in surfing, and that's a big part of it. It's like everybody's saying, well, why wouldn't I do it? It just makes sense.
Right.
And that's what sustainability really is at its core. It's like, why wouldn't I do this? It makes sense. It saves money, better lifestyle.
And certified boards are called eco boards?
Yes.
So, gotcha. So, and people that want to learn more about ecoboards can go to sustainablesurf.org.
That's right.
And they also can find out where to buy ecoboards.
Yeah, we have a list of all the manufacturers that offer ecoboards. Wow. And they can also just go to their shaper and ask them to do it too.
Wow, that's
one of the things about surfboards. It's the last custom-made sporting equipment left on Earth. Really, think about it. You can't. I mean, there aren't a lot of custom golf club makers that make golf clubs for average people. You
That's
have to
right.
be rich, you know?
Right.
But surfboards, there's a lot of artists that work in their garage. Their whole career is just shaping surfboards with foam. It's actually a really interesting sport.
You know, Kevin, Debbie and I got to meet you because of our good friend Alan Hershkovitz
Yes.
and the Green Sports Alliance. Talk a little bit about what your plans are with the Green Sports Alliance.
Sure. So we have another program called Deep Blue Surfing Events. It's essentially a sustainable package for surfing contests. It's the same thing the Green Sports Alliance does, but tuned for surf contests. And so we work with the brands to help them choose how to use like locally grown biodiesel to power their event, how to do food composting and waste diversion. And like at Pipeline, which is in Hawaii, the biggest contest of the year, all the food that's produced in the event, the compost goes across the street to a farm that produces the food for the event. So it's like a closed loop. Wow. So the Green Sports Alliance, we're excited to work with them to help bring surfing into the mix. Professional surfers, some of them have a really great story to tell on sustainability. Wow. And then also show how surfing can do the same thing everybody else is doing and use our little star power of surfing being cool to show how all this actually is cool.
Have any of your professional surfers, celebrity surfers, are they now becoming ambassadors and evangelists for sustainable surf?
Yeah, they sure are. So Greg Long is the world's best big wave surfer. He's the most decorated big wave contest rider. He rides like 60-foot high waves.
Wow. And he's one of your advocates?
He's one of our ambassadors. He's actually speaking at the next Green Sports Alliance conference.
In Chicago?
In Chicago, yes.
Wow.
And he's got a great story where he almost died when he was held down for 4 minutes in giant surf off the coast of California. And when he came back up, it was amazing, a miracle he lived, but he realized he had to do more for conservation and giving back to the planet.
Wow.
So now he's working with us to talk about that. In fact, there's an article that just came out in The Guardian this week telling that whole story. And
4 minutes underwater.
Yeah.
Holy Toledo.
And that's after getting the wind knocked out of you.
Wow.
He's underwater. It's actually a powerful story.
You know, Kevin, we're going to have you back on to continue the story, but, you know, for our listeners out there, we'd like you to, you know, what are your final thoughts that you want to leave our viewers, and as Debbie asked at the top, action points for our viewers with regards to sustainable surfing and sustainablesurf.org?
Well, I'd say if you're a surfer, definitely check out how to get an eco board and ask your shaper to make you an eco board. And you can learn all about that on our website. And if you're not a surfer, realize that there's a great history behind how to live a sustainable lifestyle, and surfing is a great example of it. And all the steps that you would do to reduce your footprint on carbon emissions or water use all help protect the ocean itself. Living an ocean-friendly life is what we ask people to do.
That's great. And for our listeners out there, again, to learn more about Kevin's great work, go to sustainablesurf.org, sustainablesurf.org. You can also learn about his great work and also where to buy and how to buy an eco board and who's certifying their boards now and who's not. And buy an eco board and do something good for the ocean today. For Debbie Levin, my co-host, I'm John Shigarian. Kevin Whilden, you are truly living proof that green is good.